What up, alphas? So, if you're not hip on the goings on at the Alpha Male podcast, you're studying analytics. I know that Mondays, for whatever reason it seems, whatever podcast, whatever the topic, they do far better. Slowly go down throughout the week in general, and then Fridays are by far the lowest, and I don't know why. But that said, with studying the analytics, the idea is to put out a brand new episode on Alpha Male and Gunfighter Life on Mondays and do a rerun on Fridays. So this is not in place of a new episode. It's just in addition to, you get a fresh episode on both podcasts on Monday. I don't just haphazardly pick these. It's that time of year where the beautiful colors are changing and you just want to spill blood on the ground. At least I do with hunting. It gets me thinking about hunting. The cool air in the mornings, at night, gets me thinking about hunting. I like putting meat on the table with my own two hands, slaying a beast and consuming it, and I don't apologize for that. Anyway, I really think this episode is worth putting out again. That old adage, go west, young man. The American West is full of public land that belongs just as much to you as any other American citizen. I encourage you to go take advantage of that. Literally millions of acres of beautiful national forest and wilderness that you are allowed to hunt. It's perhaps the last great safari for a common working man to be able to afford. So if that is you, I know that inflation and gas and things aren't as cheap as they used to be, but I don't know that I see that turning around anytime soon. So I hope you listen to this podcast with an open mind, think about it, consider it, and have a blessed day. Hello, and welcome to the Alpha Male Podcast, the podcast for men who are not ashamed or afraid to walk out and be what we're created to be. Strong, dominant, brave, made in the image of God, without apology. With that, first and foremost, I am a Christian. I make no apologies for that. It's going to be an abbreviated bio today, as we are doing this from the mobile studio. By we, I mean God and myself, and by mobile studio, I mean talking into an iPhone in my Hummer at the dog park. But I've been thinking about this episode for a while, so I wanted to get it out. Again, first and foremost, I am a Christian, a follower of God, a servant of Jesus Christ. Combat veteran, served in U.S. Marine Corps and U.S. Army, was an urban warfare instructor for the Marine Corps, FBI certified firearms instructor. I have been a professional big game hunter and guide, state rifle and pistol champion a few times over. Blessed be the Lord, my rock, who trains my hands for war and my fingers for battle. Also served on LAPD, regular assignment and more specialized assignments. I've been a private contractor. Served as the commander of a special response team for active shooters in a large metropolitan area. Again, the most alpha male thing about me is that I follow the ultimate alpha male, Jesus Christ. With that, men, let's get into today's topic. The last, or perhaps the last safari left for the average man in America today. Now, you could define safari different ways, but if we define it as an expedition to observe and hunt animals in their natural habitat, I think we could define this as a safari. And I think since most of the U.S. population lives east of the Mississippi River, it would still seem romantic and adventurous to go out west and hunt. And I think a lot of American men still have that romantic image of, Theodore Roosevelt getting out and hunting. I think deep down, most men, especially most alpha males, have a desire to hunt, to rise, kill, and eat, to have dominion over the beasts of the field. Many great warriors revered hunting. Many great warrior cultures revered hunting. From what I understand, the Spartans revered hunting. If we look at, we talked about Theodore Roosevelt or George Washington, Daniel Boone, Davy Crockett, and the biblical tradition of hunting. I'm not saying that you have to hunt to be a manly man, to be an alpha male, but I'm certainly saying that many, many alpha men do it. And I think in whatever way, it is part of your duty as a man, as an alpha male especially, to be able to provide and protect for those around you. When I was the commander of a tactical team, an active shooter response team, and guys would ask me about things to do for training and things like that, I would often tell them to get out. Take their actual war belt that we wore. Take their war belt, take your duty rifle, take your duty handgun, and go out and hunt jackrabbits. Go out and hunt things. You know, a lot of those boys grew up in the city, and although they were professional gunfighters, they may have never actually drawn blood on a living thing. There's something to be said for that. Not just shooting paper, not just shooting steel, something that moves, and not just moves a little bit, but like moves sporadically, where if you hesitate too long, it's gone. That opportunity is gone, and that translates very well into gunfighting. As we talked about, George Washington, Carlos Hathcock, arguably the greatest American sniper. I believe the Red Baron was a hunter. We talked about the Spartans, arguably some of the greatest warrior culture in history revered hunting. And I think those two speak to each other very well. They're not the same, but I believe they do rhyme. Spilling blood on the ground, taking the breath out of a living thing, obviously much weightier. Human life is precious. Much more precious than animal life. You can argue with that if you want, but you're wrong if you disagree with that. But all life is precious, and I don't take the life of animals lightly either. I think if you hunt, you have greater respect for animals, unless you're some kind of psychopath that just kills animals. I wouldn't call those hunters. But I remember being a very young man hunting with my father, and I remember it was a heart-wrenching ordeal. And even back then, I had decided I didn't want an animal to suffer. I don't want an animal to suffer, and if you're a good hunter, you don't allow that. And I think there are important lessons to be learned from hunting. Like, you can, by God's grace, go out into the wild with a tool in your hands and provide meat for yourself and for those under you. That you can protect, that you are proficient and efficient as a killer. And again, this may not call to every man listening, but if it calls to you, don't apologize for it. Again, the Bible does talk about hunting. It does talk about killing. It does talk about having dominion over the beasts. So don't apologize for it if you want to hunt. Don't apologize for being a hunter. It's kind of like apologizing for being a man. Don't apologize for what you're created to be. And if you want to hunt, if you have hunted before, maybe back east, or if you've never hunted before, I think you might glean from this episode. So with that laying the groundwork, let's talk about what I would consider the last safari for the common man. Back in the 50s, a man may have been able to work a factory job and support his family, being the only breadwinner, and be able to save up and go on grand vacations and go on safari. But let's do what we can with what we have right now. And you may have the means to, save up and go on that trophy elk hunt in Colorado with a guide, or go on that Alaskan sheep hunt. But I'm talking about for the everyman. You may not have the disposable income or may not wish to spend 10 grand, 30 grand, 60 grand to go on one of those hunts. And remember, I was a professional big game hunter and guide. I have done that. I know what those prices can be. In fact, I tried, as a professional big game hunter and guide, and I worked on a very large ranch where I would still consider it wild hunting. These animals had, if they got away, you may not see them again, especially in the days in a hunt. So it was definitely what I would consider fair chase, hunting things like buffalo and elk and all manner of exotic species, whether African or Asian. But they were expensive. They were expensive hunts. And I tried to get something going, a learn to hunt class. And I tried to do it as affordably as I could while still being able to make a profit for myself and be able to make it worth the owner of the ranch's while. For not trophy animals, but just like animals that needed to be culled, needed to be taken out of the herd, overpopulation, getting too old, whatever. And even that was going to be quite expensive. And I tried it and it didn't work just because I think most people weren't willing to spend the money on it. Which was sad, live and learn. Not everything bears fruit. And if it doesn't bear fruit, you cut it down and do something else. With that being said, what can you do if you want that romance of going, perhaps out west and hunting? What's an aspiring alpha male to do? What's a man that wants to learn to hunt to do? I would submit there are still opportunities. There are still affordable things for the everyman. And I would say that is predominantly varmint hunting out west. You can still go to a lot of the western states. Utah, Nevada, Arizona, even Northern California, believe it or not. Eastern Oregon, Montana, Wyoming. There's vast open public land, and that public land means it's owned by you, the citizen. It's part of your inheritance. Take advantage of it. It's not just for the people that live in Bozeman or the people that live in, Kalispell or that live in Boise. Not leaving out Idaho, perhaps one of my favorite states or my favorite state in the whole country. I've been to, I believe, 48 out of the 50. But it's not just for them. It's for you, too. If you live in Detroit, it's for you. If you live in New Jersey, it's for you. If you live in South Florida, it's for you. It's your land as much as it is my land who lives in northern Arizona. And I purposely constructed life to live on the border of a 1.8 million acre national forest and wilderness. But it's just as much yours as it is mine. And big game regulations, unfortunately, in this country have become convoluted, and they break them up into these different zones and areas. And you generally, even me living here, have to win a lottery. Like, I didn't pull an elk tag this year. I live here. And you may not have the money to invest. You may spend hundreds and hundreds of dollars just to enter and not get anything. That can be a lot nowadays for an average man. And the regulations alone, if you grow up in a place, you may understand the, deer hunting regulations out west. But if you don't, if you move like I do, state to state, year to year, it can be daunting, even for somebody that's hunted their whole life, to understand that you can hunt here, but if you look across the street, totally different season, totally different regulations, totally different restrictions on animals. I can shoot any elk I want over here, but I can only shoot a forked male on the other side of the road at a different season. It can be very daunting. And like I said, a lot of times you have to win a lottery. But if you want to come varmint hunting out west, I'd say that's in the reach of most men. It's not super confusing. It's not super hard, and it's not cost prohibitive for most. Now, if you're, that young man that's busting his butt, saving every penny, eating ramen noodles, there's a time and a place for that if you have to do that. But if you have a little bit of disposable income and you want that romantic Western adventure, I think you can still have it. If you want to learn to hunt, a primitive way, spotting and stalking or driving animals, the way we have, if you want to get a group of buddies together and go on a road trip, and learn to drive hunt, to hunt in a human tribe as we have for thousands of years, you can still do that. It's still available. And check everything I say today. Check local regulations. Laws change all the time from year to year. I don't know when you're going to listen to this. I don't know what state you're going to go to. But you may not even have to buy a hunting license to hunt some of the animals I'm talking about today. They may be considered either invasive species or varmints, you may not even need a hunting license. But, you can come out west and go to, let's say, LaSalle, Utah, and hunt prairie dogs. You could, a lot of times, find public land or knock on a rancher's door because they don't want prairie dogs the vast majority of the time and say, hey, do you have prairie dogs? Can I hunt them? You can, on public land, hunt coyotes. Now, coyotes are a little bit harder to hunt. There may be a bit of a learning curve there, but, hunting jackrabbits or prairie dogs, at least a start, and then maybe you get a coyote. Going out with some buddies and walking through the sagebrush or walking through the desert and hunting jackrabbits, that's within the reach of a common man. That's hopefully within your reach. Either by yourself, just to get some solitude, to get some alone wilderness time, which can be great. Or for, getting your tribe together of men and saying, we're going to learn how to put meat on the table. We're going to learn how to hunt. We're going to do this. We're going to learn this. Maybe you should have learned it from your father or your grandfather or your uncle, but you didn't. And instead of, crying about how your dad was never there, about how you didn't get enough manly inspiration when you were a kid or whatever, that's not what men do. You man up and get it done. You may decide, I'm going to go and learn how to hunt, and this is a way that you can do it. Hunting prairie dogs, hunting ground squirrels in California, hunting whistle pigs in Idaho. There is public land that you can, I know especially in Idaho and in Nevada, from major airports, you could rent a car and drive literally a half an hour and be in good hunting. You could go hunt whistle pigs, which you could call prairie dog. In Idaho, they call them whistle pigs. You could land in the Boise airport, rent a car, and in literally 30 minutes be on good open hunting land and shooting quite a few, if you are blessed, whistle pigs / groundhogs / ground squirrels, whatever you want to call them. And hopefully some jackrabbits and maybe coyote. And again, if you can afford that, dream elk hunt in Colorado, that's great. But even if you can't afford it, I wouldn't recommend that you start there. If you can't afford a trophy deer hunt in Texas, sitting on a private ranch with a corn feeder at a certain distance, waiting for a timer to go off. If that's how you want to hunt, I'm not putting you down. But if you want to learn skills to put meat on the table and be a good shot and learn different ways of hunting, I wouldn't say that's your best bet. You're probably going to learn more going out on a DIY adventure, with a $20 Walmart pop-up tent and the gun that you have, trying to figure out how to get close to a prairie dog, dog town, or, exactly how do you work in a group and push and do drives for jackrabbits. Again, you got to check local laws. I don't know the laws in every state for every species. But literally, let's say you live in Detroit, Michigan. You could get a group of buddies together. I know gas is expensive right now. But if you split it 4 or 5 ways, get a couple of buddies in an F-150 and drive out west with the guns you hopefully already own. And like I said, a $20 pop-up tent. And, you stop by Winco or Sam's Club and get a case of water and whatever kind of, road trip snacks and food you like to eat. And, head out west and get it done. Have some adventure. Learn to hunt. Learn to put meat on the table. And if you're more of a tactical guy, you heard a little bit about my background. If you listen, normally you hear the extended version of the background. I am too, and I think that hunting, as the Spartans did, as many great warriors in history did, it's beneficial for you too. So if that's your main goal, take what you have. If you're a red-blooded alpha male American, hopefully you have an AR-15. unless you live somewhere like New Jersey or something. I mean, I feel for you. But hopefully you have, an AR-15, a Mini 14. Take that. You can shoot groundhogs with that. You can shoot prairie dogs with that. You can shoot coyotes with that. Is it as good as a good, bolt action bull barrel 22-250? No, but it's fine. It's actually one of the places where crossover the AR-15 is great. That round was originally designed as a varmint round. That came from the 222 Remington for varmint hunting. It's a great choice. Again, is your 16-inch carbine with a red dot as good for coyote hunting as something specially built? No, but it's fine. And if you don't get a coyote, it's probably your lack of field craft, not your lack of hunting implement. Today's hunting has gotten so about marketing. You got to have Cryptex this year, and you got to have Sika gear camo, and you got to have, the latest X brand optic with X amount of magnification. You don't need that. There's nothing wrong with that stuff, but forget about the marketing. If you have a single shot shotgun, or even if you don't, they're less than $150, even in today's crazy prices. And you generally don't have to be in the state you live in to buy a long gun. You could, fly into Vegas, and the Walmarts, I can know because I just moved in there, the Walmarts in Nevada sell firearms. You could go to a Walmart, assuming you're not a felon, you don't have any problems with background checks. You could go buy a single shot shotgun for let's say roughly $120 and some ammo, and be into it for less than $200 as far as the gun goes. And whatever boots you have are fine. And whatever pants you have are fine. And whatever jacket you have is fine. Whatever little backpack you have for hiking around for the day is fine. You don't need a bunch of crazy stuff to be a great hunter. Learn the field craft. Gear can make a difference, but it's kind of like shooting. It makes like 10% difference. You being a skilled handgun shooter, if you give a great handgun shooter a Glock 19 or a SIG 226 or an STI 2011, yeah, there'll be a little bit of a difference. But the vast majority of the difference is a skill of the shooter. If you want to learn good field craft, good hunting technique, how to spot and stalk, how to call game in, how to get hits on living, breathing, moving creatures, go do it with what you have. If you have, that single shot shotgun or that pump action 870 that you've had for forever, that'll work. If you want to buy something for this, I think even within the reach of most common people, no matter where you live, I think most states this would be legal in pretty much every state. But, go get, my number one recommendation would be a Savage Axis in 223. They make the combos that come with a 3-9 scope. And in my experience, Savage Axes have been ridiculously accurate for the money. For a couple $100, a Savage Axis in 223. You could kill all the species we talked about well. You'd be within a couple percentage points of super expensive high-end gear. And the good thing about the 223 is the ammo is cheap and available. You can hunt prairie dogs with that. You can hunt coyotes with that. If you decided later on you wanted to hunt deer, move up to something bigger, it wouldn't be my first choice, but the ammo selection for 223 has come a long way, and with the right grain bullet and the right shot placement, you can get it done. But anyway, if you wanted to do all that and have a rifle, the Savage Axis, there are other options. I'm just saying, if you don't know where to start, I would start there and look at that. A Savage Axis, I'm a big fan of stainless, but you can get them for a couple of $100 with a scope. And the 223, is a cheap and affordable round. So for a couple of $100, if you want to go even less, like I said, go the single shot shotgun route and go out and hunt jackrabbits. And then you got a good home defense tool when you go home if you don't have any weapons. But whatever weapon you have, if you want to just go with that, go with that. My nephew, whom I love, who was a good young man, Eagle Scout, he didn't own any guns at the time. Now, the first gun that I ever owned was my uncle's 410 bolt-action Mossberg shotgun, probably worth $50, especially in the condition that it was in. But it was my first firearm, and I took many things with that hunting as as a boy. And my nephew came out, and I was like, all right, you're staying with me. We got a project we're going to do. We're going to restore this old gun. We're going to get some cold blue and, some true oil or whatever kind of wood finish we had. And we refinished that old gun, and he didn't know it. But when he refinished it, I gave it to him. Monetarily, maybe worth $50, $75 for that shotgun. It was beat to crap. Old bolt-action Mossberg 410. But we went out and we went hunting with that. And you know what? Now he still hunts. He goes out back home when he went back home, he hunts geese and ducks and things like that. And he's since got, a Remington 870, a much nicer shotgun. But I bet he's not going to forget that old bolt-action 410. It was given to me by my uncle. And I gave it to my nephew. And hopefully one day he'll give it to his kid or his nephew. If you don't want to go the new gun route, you could go to a gun show. And, you could buy a bolt-action Mossberg. They're not really coveted, and they're good hunting implements. They were made for the average man to put meat on the table, and they're still good at it. You could go find an old Sears, back when you could, there was a day not too long ago when you could just go to Sears or go to a hardware store and buy a gun. There are Sears branded shotguns, or J.C. Higgins is kind of the bargain brand, but they're fine shotguns. And you could usually find those at gun shows for, $150 or less if you want something with a little bit of nostalgia. But what I'm saying is you don't have to spend a bunch of money to learn to hunt. You don't have to, it's not like in Europe or in Germany where I've heard it's for an elite class. The average man in America, if you put your mind to it, work a few extra hours if you have to, you can learn the skill of putting meat on the table and hunting and protecting. You can go on safari. If you're listening in Europe, check your laws, but you could come here, and if you know somebody, there are, I think, a state or two where it's illegal to loan somebody a gun, which I think is ridiculous. But if you know somebody here, I've heard in Europe, a lot of places, it's for like an elite class, which is sad. Hunting should be for every man to be able to put meat on the table. But sadly, it's not the way in Europe, and it's getting that way in America, especially for big game. It's kind of it's seen as like an elite thing. But it's not meant to be that way, and I don't think it's right for it to be that way. So even if you're listening in Europe, check into coming here and going out west and being able to, if you know anybody that you can borrow a gun from and have them take you out hunting, I think it's worthwhile. And I don't think it's something you'd ever forget. And again, if you're looking into this, you want some top picks, I'd say my number one pick would be Idaho. I love Idaho. It's just beautiful country. You can fly into Boise, and Boise's kind of right on the mix. You can hunt some beautiful mountain and wilderness areas not far from there. You could hunt high desert if you want to hunt what I would say easy game to learn on. Whistle pigs, which is what the locals there call prairie dogs or ground squirrels, and jackrabbits. Another honorable mention is Eurasian collared dove. If you want something delicious to eat, many states consider Eurasian collared dove an invasive species because they're not native. But you know what? I don't think you or I can taste the difference between them and mourning doves. They're freaking delicious. And again, you can hunt them with, $150 break action shotgun that you get from Walmart. Less than $150. $150 out the door with tax and shells, enough to hunt with. That'd be a good place to start. Check and see if they haven't changed it, but it used to be you could hunt coyotes and prairie dogs and jackrabbits in Nevada without even having to buy a license. So you could fly into Vegas, a cheap airport, and rent a car, and within literally half an hour you could drive out into the desert and hunt jackrabbit and things like that. Instead of going and getting drunk and doing stupid things in Vegas, you could fly into there. Assuming you don't have any problem with background, you could fly into there, drive to Walmart, buy a break-action shotgun or a Savage Axis, and drive into the desert and hunt. Buy a cheap rabbit call and try your hand at coyotes once you've killed a few jackrabbits. Those would be good places to start. And maybe look into other places. If you've always wanted to go to Oregon, maybe drive and see the Oregon coast, which is beautiful, and drive to Eastern Oregon, which is very much different than Western Oregon, and see about hunting out there. Again, my top picks would be, if you're really looking to pinch pennies, a break action single shot shotgun. You could check that out. Or if you want, a good rifle, the Savage Axis for a couple $100. It comes with a scope and 223. I just did an episode on gunfighter life. If you don't know, that's a whole other podcast we do that's just about guns and gunfighting on the top 3 varmint calibers. It ties in nicely with this one. And then also I did one on the Walmart Adventure Survival Kit. You could go check that out for cheap, effective gear to go do this stuff, go on safari. Obviously, if you're going to do this out west, it's not like back east. You could go for miles and miles and days and not see a road, especially in wilderness areas. So, don't be stupid. Carry your Bible, carry a compass, carry a way to start a fire, carry an emergency, space blanket. But, don't be afraid as a man, especially as an alpha male. Have an adventure. Have a safari if you've ever felt like you've wanted to do that. If you've ever read, or if you want to read, Death in the Long Grass by Peter Hathaway Capstick, or The Ghost in the Darkness. Have a little bit of romance and adventure in your life. Don't be afraid to get out there and get your hands dirty and bloody and be an alpha male. With that, man, I'm going to say thanks for listening. Have a blessed day. If you like this podcast, you may also like Gunfighter Life, which we talked about. If you care about the important stuff, you may like Simple Man Sermons, the preachings of a simple man called by God to share the good news of Jesus Christ. Usually I throw out a tactical tip at the end of these episodes. It kind of seems like this whole episode was a lot of tactical tips. But I'll throw out a quick, rapid fire of tactical tips. If you're going to come do this, especially hunting for a day or two, like I said, a $20 Walmart dome tent. And we already talked about guns, so I'm not going to rehash that. But I believe it's Red Rock, but probably Amazon and eBay has a lot of probably $20-ish sling bags. Pick one of those. Again, refer to the Walmart Adventure Survival Kit. But Walmart carries, small bags like this. If you're going to hunt, I like the one shoulder bag so it doesn't interfere with my shooting style. I have an old one I picked up from like a gun store used that I use all the time. So it's like a felt bag. I probably picked it up for $5 or $10. I've had it for I don't know how many years and hunt with it all the time. But you can get something like that, just an easy sling bag. I'm not talking about packing out an elk. But, $20. You may already have one. Throw in that a Sawyer Mini water filter, a decent compass, not one of those cheap Chinese compasses on the survival bracelets that may or may not point north, but, spend $5 or $10 on a decent compass that actually works, just in case. Throw in there a Hanka 550 cord, a decent knife. Again, if you don't have one for this, you can literally go to Walmart and for $5. I have one in my wife's trunk kit where she's got the single shot shotgun and a knife I picked up at Walmart for my wife, or just for a spare knife to give to somebody if I take them hunting or something. I don't care if they mess it up because they don't know how to use a knife. But for $5, $10, you can get a decent folding or fixed blade knife. Throw that in there. Get a ferro rod, or if you don't, just get $1 lighter and throw it in there. And again, an emergency space blanket, $1 or $2. And probably a poncho. Even if you don't think it's going to rain, they can do a lot to keep you warm. And then that's a bag for your ammo. And then a Hanka 550 cord. And if you don't know, look up how to tie, a bowline knot. I think every alpha male ought to know how to tie a bowline knot. And you can make little loops to carry your game, whether it's doves or rabbit or whatever, on that pack. And then the rest of the room, throw in a couple of bottles of water. So a real quick, down and dirty, grab and go kit. I'm doing this off the cuff, watching my dog run around a dog park. So I may have forgot one or two things that you want to throw in there. Tactical verse of the day. The earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof. I think it's good for a man, good for your soul, to get out into nature and enjoy God's creation, what is often referred to as general revelation, the majesty and the glory of God, thinking that every mountain, every rock, every blade of grass, every tree was created and exists because of a mighty and beautiful God. With that, men, be strong, prove yourself a man, and have a blessed day.